Hello and welcome. You're listening to the audio presentation of She Came From Nowhere, the novelization of a 13-book series. It is the story of a secret agent from a multiversal government agency discovering the location of God and taking action to kill her. The series covers the war between gods and mortals who create and destroy themselves and their worlds. The novels are written and performed by Caleb Morazi. If you would like to support the creation of this series and add input of your own, swing by patreon.com/shecamefromnowhere to become a secret agent. You'll get access to the entire novel, new series chapters as they become available, and audio from each. Link in the description. And now, enjoy Chapter 11, The Nameless Planet. 1. When scanning the air and sea, Ever realizes he's in a microcosm, and he wants to go. Just because Kaplan abandoned his experiments didn't make them stop existing, many of them becoming hostile when left on their own. He expected the acid sea to be in name only, but stepping in it made his suit's metals sizzle. He knew to be cautious. Their island was tiny, and he could see the tide rising as the sun set. Sequi was scouting in the air, and if she left him and Griffin there, they would be in trouble. Marilyn, Sequi calls, move your people into the sea. Their adaptability will protect them. The amalgam complies, the Imogen yelling, everyone on board. Are you out of your mind? Ever shouts. Why don't you bend reality and take us back where we belong? This may not mean a lot to you, but if something happens, we'll all die. Unlike you, it's permanent for us. This suit can only handle so much abuse. You're scared of a created world, but thought you controlled the universes I made? 2. It's not what they want, but the tide is rising. Griffin and Ever climb on the amalgam. As Marilyn directs the thing that was 5A_Canal-N's mind link, Sequi lands on its back, carrying the multiverse's last Ferbtech. Wharton, Treaton, Sakan, and Trayton land beside the CIB agents, unsure of what the Imogen has planned. They'd all seen years of wars over the device, so her overwhelming affection for it had them unnerved. You can relax, she calls to them. It won't be long. All dreams come to an end. We better get on her good side so she doesn't decide to smite us all, Griffin says in a low voice to the others. I've seen firsthand what she does to those who oppose her. Sakan is the first to step forward and address her. Supreme Leader, we are at your command. We'll fight by your side and ensure that you arrive safely at your destination. She bows to the Imogen, extending her wings in an illic display of total respect. I wonder if you mean it, Sequi says. Did you call to me when you were enslaved or sick? Or did you try to make it on your own, allying yourself with the most powerful one? Why submit now? Is it because you have nowhere else to turn? Sequi's eyes pierce Sakan's soul, and the Illic drops her gaze. I don't want you coming to me because you have to. I want you to choose to serve by your own free will. Wharton and Treaton bow low. We wish to serve. We're nothing compared to you. The amalgam's many faces scream in pain as Sequi kneels, placing her Ferbtech on it for comfort. It will only hurt us for a time, my pet. No one's pain lasts forever. It's not that bad, Marilyn says, but Sequi sees the sweat beating on her forehead. It's okay to admit you have pain, the Imogen says. Broken worlds breed hurt. She turns her back on Griffin, Ever, and Trayton, watching the sun set over the sea. 3. I want to blast her as soon as we're in mapped multi-space, Griffin says to Ever beneath the starless sky. I should have done it when I first met her, but I was naive. You saw my truest form, pure and good, and you hoped others would see it, Sequi says, loud enough for them to hear. Do you know where you would have ended up if you weren't naive? I've seen all the results, yet you don't trust that this is best. This, Griffin yells, standing over the Imogen. Dead worlds across the multiverse? Controlling agency destroyed? My wife gone and I can't reclaim her body? And yet you survived, Sequi says. You think it was luck or you were just that amazing? I carried you when everyone was dying around you so we could meet again. Look at your life, she continues. How many coincidences were there that allowed you to get here? It's me, Griffin. I'm the only thing you've ever met that was good. Recognize that you're not in control. So far you've refused. Your chances are running out. Sequi's words hit hard and he turns, going to the far end of the amalgam. What are you looking at? He says as he passes Ever. Try winning a debate with her. 4. You know, I could split the universe apart and destroy everything, Ever says. Sequi smiles. You can, and you will, Ever Wilfrey. You'll destroy everything I've made, everything called good and everything called bad, never understanding their purpose. Griffin felt he was cursed when he was given his wolf face, but look how it served him. And Certain was sure he would destroy the source of all life, and it would all cease. He didn't understand that I put myself in every living thing. If he could destroy me, my fragments would still be on a trillion worlds, waiting to take root and begin again. I want you to know I was revered as a god, Ever begins. The amalgam tilts, something hideous sliding up out of the water, that then leaps, crushing the creature. If she calls life like this good, she's a monster, Griffin says for the others to hear. More slimy creatures ooze up from the depths, their mouths gaping and their eyes stalks glowing faintly from within. Their weight tips the amalgam further, causing Sakan, Wharton, and Treaton to launch themselves into the black sky, screaming down on the invaders with their claws. They hadn't wanted to start a war in this foreign world, but they swore allegiance to the Imogen, and they would do what was necessary. Marilyn sighs in relief as Griffin blasts the slime, throwing caustic blood everywhere. The amalgam shrieks as Griffin misses. Stop whining, he says. You've got plenty. Blood runs from its wounds, pouring into the water, and the surface roils, more creatures coming to the top in horrifying varieties. Blackened leeches, spined jellyfish, and muscled invertebrates with jagged teeth. The Ilex fearlessly fend them off, covering themselves with viscera, but still the beasts keep coming, the amalgam sinking under their weight. Sakan cries out, "There's too many! We're going to have to die a warrior's death!" Even Griffin, with all his firepower, is overwhelmed. He yells to Sequi, "Help us!" The air around Ever shimmers, space-time warping around him as he begins crushing the world around him. "Don't you dare," Griffin yells. "I need to get back to my wife." Until now, Trayton had remained in the air, aloof and afraid to lose the last life that he had, but he knew if he wanted to survive, he was going to have to help. He dove in, his sword slicing holes in reality, discussing creatures getting sucked inside the large voids. The Wolf-Fate's agent hits a button, revealing his suit's thermal core. "We can all lose." Sequi steps into the fray, saying, "Enough, all of you. I don't want any more of you to die." Complete stillness falls. "Please return to your homes and let us pass." The creatures slide into the sea, and Ever drops to his knees. "I almost killed you all." 5. The red moon rises as dark clouds roll across the water, making it hard for Griffin to see even across the amalgam, dark creatures looming at the corners of his vision. Ever's mech suit glows in the gloom as he fires plasma bolts at random around him, causing Trayton, the Ilex, and Sequi to scurry for cover behind him as he continues turning. "I'm not letting them get past me, Griff," he yells, his eyes wild and glassy. "What do you want?" the Wolf-Face agent howls at Sequi. "Money? Power?" "I made everything. Why would I need those?" Sequi laughs. "How would you even do that in your position?" She effortlessly flips Ever on his back, pinning his arms. "They got me, Griff. I didn't think it would end like this. I did my best," Ever says. "Don't give in just yet," Griffin says. "We're going to make it. Hang in there." In the fog, with phantoms surrounding him, the Wolf-Fate's agent makes his way to Sequi, bowing before her. "Here," he says. "I give up. We need your protection. I've always relied on myself, but I recognize there's nothing that I can give you." Unable to move, Ever fires bright shots over the dark waters. "He's coming for us. He wants to destroy us all, especially you," he says to Sequi. In his citadel, dead but still dreaming, his eyes roll back and he chants syllables from an ancient language. The phrasing used by Ever triggers Griffin's memories of ancient stories, and he goes white. "Please don't tell me where I think we are," he says to Sequi. 6. Turmen rise from the sea carrying their queen's throne, and Certain's heart jumps. "I'm sorry for my attempts on your life," he says to Sequi. "Help us or we'll disappear." "It's always in moments of distress that people call out to me," Sequi says, yet they rarely mean it. The Turmen set the queen down, her blonde hair capturing the imagination of the males before spraying webbing, ensnaring them. "Do you mean it?" Sakan recognized the queen as an illusion, wondering why the men wanted to keep company with such a hideous creature, but she waited, looking for her opportunity. "Why won't you do something to help them?" the Ilek asked Sequi. People continue to believe their own delusions until they choose not to. Griffin and Ever lift the queen's throne with Wharton and Treaton. They march towards Sequi, with Trayton leading the way, his flaming sword drawn. "She can't fool you beyond what you already want," Imogen says. "You are all free." Triton points his sword at her. Lathi has offered us thrones in her kingdom, he says. You are subject to the laws of Felorian. Step aside or be moved aside. 7. Can you move the earth and the sky? Sequi asks the illusionary queen who controls the men's minds. You start a war with me and you start a war with all time and space. Consider your next move carefully because, believe me, I will crush you. Lathi laughs evilly, pulling Triton with a tug of the translucent webbing, shouting, To Thalarion! They pass the Imogen and she says, You won't be staying here long. Sequi shakes her head. He wanted to make worlds, but he didn't care for them. Walk with me, Marilyn says to Sakan and Sequi. She's going to lead them to their deaths. As the queen moves towards the amalgam's edge, the dolphin warrior has it roll toward them, its raw underbelly coming up out of the caustic sea. The women walk up the incline toward the men, all of them keeping their pace. Lathi gives a shriek of frustration as she makes the men move faster, but they get no closer to their goal. I'll do something if you won't, Sakan says, as she launches herself at the throne. The sensors in Ever's suit light up and he instinctively turns, breaking the queen's webbing as he swats down the Illic. Oh, I'm sorry. Are you okay? He asks, stooping. Sakan looks at Sequi. I felt that, like I was on Illic. Did I cause reality to shift? The Imogen nods. You did. How are you going to use the power? Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should, she warns, but the Illic isn't listening. Without hesitating, Sakan attacks the queen, freeing the men from their webs. Certain sees through Triton's eyes how dangerously close they are to the sea, and says to the others, Gentlemen, if we want to keep our freedom, we must attack at once. Griffin fires his arm cannon at the queen, hitting nothing, and yells, Sequi, help! It's not up to me, she says. We're here to see how the Illic handles others' lives. They look at Sakan, who had been carried into the goat on the brink of death, and now is practically glowing. Cease, she says, making Lathi and her turmen disappear. She waves her clawed hands over the sea, and creatures rise to the surface, belly up. That ecosystem thrived on the sea's acidic properties, Sequi says quietly to her. Well, it's safe for us, Sakan explains. The multiverse is dangerous enough without water that can kill you, don't you think? Besides, I left it a little acidic, she lies. The amalgam shrinks as more legs grow. I'm getting us out of this awful place. It's about time someone did something, Griffin says. I swear, she wants us dead. They pick up speed as Marilyn directs the amalgam's new appendages. Griffin, use your visor zoom and tell us if you can see the land approaching in the distance. You don't know what you're rushing to, Sequi warns Sakan, but she's ignored. Huge tusks grow on the amalgam's bow, pushing the sea creature's corpse out of the way. Whatever it is, I'm sure that we can handle it. I faced worse situations before with less power on my side. We'll be okay without your cryptic warnings and help. Ever uses his jump boots to leap into the starless sky. I don't want to be a downer, he says over the comm to Griffin, but land looks at least a day away on the water. He tells Sakan and she says, We'll make it. Drowning is the only other option. We can't keep this up, Marilyn tells the Illic a few hours later. We're exhausted. You think we should just stay here? Sakan asks. I don't like the odds. Perhaps there's another way. If you give us an extra spine going straight up with skin on each side, we could catch the wind to keep pace without killing ourselves. The amalgam's back tears open, spine rising. We haven't seen the last of this world. Deep beneath the sea's surface, the great old one opens his eyes, sensing his world's death, and the being who challenges his ancient authority floating helplessly above. Every action has equal consequences, Sequi says. Please choose wisely. Sakan raises her hand to the sky, causing the wind to blow and fill the amalgam's flesh sail. Doing anything is better than doing nothing, the Illic snaps back. 8. Is there anything I can do to make this thing move faster? Certain asks Sakan. The sooner we get off this planet, the better, and if it weren't for you, we would have died. He wished he could have expressed his fears of having only one life to live, but he wasn't willing to admit that even to himself. She was the closest thing he had experienced to love, but he didn't trust it because he had never once experienced anything like it before. I want you to know, if you think I've forgotten how you enslaved me in your attempt to destroy the multiverse, you're mistaken. That's a lot to make up for. She wished that she had his callousness so she could just destroy him and be done with it, but she didn't have it in her. And since she couldn't, the pain of his betrayal would linger. You can change the world, he says, after they've been quiet for a long time. I want you to change me. Sakan looks at him in surprise. You know where we're from. You remember what we had to do to survive. It drives me. It causes destruction. Please. If he could just get her to trust him, he could access the power she had, he thought. If he could just get her to do what he needed to get done, with no one being the wiser. 9. Griffin and Ever watch for anything crawling out of the sea. We have to be careful, Griffin says. She could be changing us in ways we don't immediately recognize. Ever checks his weapon system. We'll do what we have to do to get out alive. Raising a cautionary hand, Griffin says, don't be hasty. We need to size up the situation first. The other agent nods like he's listening, but checks his weapons again. He wants off the planet, knowing that his resourcefulness won't go far here. I'll be right back, Griffin says, using his jet boots to fly to Sequi. She doesn't have full control, does she, he asks, and she smiles. I mean, we make it out alive, right? In his rear camera, Ever keeps an eye on everyone, waiting for them to make a move. He would do what it took to protect Griffin. They'd seen too much together. My dear friend, Sequi says soothingly, you worry about everything like you have control. No so-called reality is real. Each one is made only for my pleasure. Well, I hope we're entertaining enough to be allowed to make our way back to Central. Sakan and Wharton and Treaton move to Griffin and Sequi. Ever whips around, approaching with weapons drawn. I want you all to move away from him, now. Griffin puts up his hands. Ever, it's fine. But the younger man doesn't back down. That's enough of that, Sakan says casually. I was hoping we could all get along, but I can see that that's not possible. She waves her clawed hands, and their mech suits disappear. 10. I want you to know that you're not stopping me, Ever says. That suit was holding me back. I'm not trying to harm you, little one, Sakan says soothingly. I know you're tough. Seen a lot. We all have. I'm just trying to make sure that we get off this planet without killing each other. I've lost too many people in my life, and I'm trying to keep these. I'm not so comfortable with this, Griffin says. We can't help if we're not armed. Certain looks around at the ragtag crew, regretting that he had destroyed so many different versions of them before they were able to arrive here. He could have had an army with him, yet he whittled them down to 3 Illic and 3 Central agents. I'm not worried, Ever says. I escaped a mind link, survived the fall of a major metropolis, and routed out a life-ending threat. The worlds I step onto fear me. Can't you talk some sense into her? Griffin begs Sequi. We're being left to die. The Imogen looks at Sakan as she relents. Okay, I don't want you to die, but know that what I'm giving you is for the danger out there, not on here. Misuse them, and I'll take them away just as fast. The 2 agents nod, and Ever's hand is replaced with a chainsaw, a tiny gun appearing on his waist. In Griffin's hands appears a weapon made of flesh, where he finds teeth loaded into the magazine. Help us get out alive. Griffin holds up the single round of ammunition. What happens when I run out? I want you to stick close. If fighting breaks out, Sakan says, I'll get you more. That puts us on a very short leash, Griffin says. Hardly seems fair at all. It's where you belong. What would have happened if the Queen decided to turn your weapons on us? If something like that happens again, we'll at least have a fighting chance. I need you to inflict damage on whatever is coming at us, and not be a liability. Why don't you take the threats away? Make it so we survive without fighting. That's not a good idea, Sequi says quietly. You're upsetting a delicate balance. Look, she's against it, which probably makes it a great idea, Griffin says dryly. Without warning, Ever unholsters his tiny gun, firing at the unholy creature circling in the pitch black. The weapons chirp, slamming him against the amalgam's back. Huge scaled beasts with leathery wings who have been keeping their distance swoop down at the party, shrieks erupting at their beaks. This is not how I want to die, Certain yells, taking to the air with his sword drawn, flames ripping through them. The wolf-faced agent crouches, ready for combat, shielded by his large weapon. Sakan joins Certain with Wharton and Treaton, engaging their new enemies in an aerial attack, using tactics they had all learned at the cost of thousands of Illic lives. Chainsaw roaring, Ever slashes and nicks the amalgam. Marilyn screams in pain. 11. Griffin fires teeth into the sky, causing bird-like creatures to hit the water. Sakan, you can let me die and it won't matter. You won't be able to find your way back to Illic. Sakan looks down at the chainsaw-wielding man, the wolf-faced agent on the back of what once was a mass of people from all across the multiverse, fighting alongside her, her uncle in the body of an angel. If anyone could survive this, she knew they could. Can't you go faster, Griffin yells at Marilyn, his magazine growing light. I don't want to pressure you, but it doesn't look like we're putting a dent in the flock. His gun squishes emptily as a leathery winged beast swoops in. Griffin dives out of the way and rolls before cracking it over the head with the weapon's fleshy butt. He tries to keep his footing, the amalgam picking up speed. The bird-like creature's bodies slide off the back. I guess you want me to make it alone, he yells at Sakan. The Illic shouts down indignantly. Weak one, who increased the wind for you? The wolf-faced agent feels his weapon getting heavy as it supernaturally reloaded. There was no denying it. He was at her mercy, and he hoped he could gain her power. 12. Sequi's clawed feet grip the amalgam as she watches Sakan lead the fight above. Ma'am, are you sure we can trust her? Marilyn asks. She's pretty unpredictable, and doesn't seem to think beyond the current moment. Sequi smiles sadly. Not meaning to criticize her, but as a warrior, I worry about her ambition and it's clouding her judgment. So it is with every creature that cannot see the width or breadth of time and space. I have to let her, though, she continues. I prefer to let you pick your own fate. You see everything, the dolphin says. I'm afraid we're headed for destruction. I do. And I already know it's too late, Sequi says. You will all soon be destroyed. Marilyn looks up at her in absolute shock. So there's no hope for any of us? No, the Imogen says simply. A moment comes when the choices you've made lead to an inevitable outcome. Sakan reshaping the world was the tipping point. It could have stopped before you fought the pirates in the hallway. It could have stopped before the otter killed the director. It could have stopped before Sakan left Illic looking for her father, but you've all chosen without understanding the outcome, and so we're here. I can tell you, you won't suffer. It'll all be over in a second, and you'll be rejoined to the everything. If you're hoping to help, the best thing you can do is push forward. Don't you care for us at all? Marilyn demands loudly over the fight above. More than you know, Sequi says. It's why you have everything that you chase. That's not fair, the Dolphin Warrior yells. You make the world into what you want it to be. Why would you allow us, who have no idea about the outcomes of our actions, to be in charge of its creation? I won't help you or her destroy us. Marilyn commands the amalgam to stop swimming, rolling over, submerging its flesh sail. Sakan lands beside Sequi, demanding, Why are we stopped? What did you say? 13. Everett tried to ignore the movement below the amalgam, but it was large and fast. He leapt as it hit the old one's tentacle face, smashing the amalgam's spine mast, carrying everyone in the air like they were a barnacle on its head. Ever was grateful the sea wasn't acidic as he rose to the surface and saw the beast's wings carrying them higher. With horror, he watched as the beast tipped his head, bellowing a threat in an ancient tongue, and the amalgam slid off, tumbling from the great height into the sea. At that moment, Ever had no other thought than how not to get crushed, and he swam frantically before getting thrown by a large wave created by the amalgam. He swam to his place of safety in the turbulent waters and heard the amalgam groaning in pain, its broken bones poking out of its skin. Ever climbs out of the water and on its back, wanting to help in some way, looking to the sky for Sequi or Sakan. He'd seen many strange worlds, and he'd be very happy when he left this one.
End of Chapter 11. Thank you for listening to this audio presentation of She Came From Nowhere, a series novelization written and performed by Caleb Morazi. If you'd like to read more of this book, read chapters from the series, listen to audio, and further support the development of this project, please go to patreon.com/SheCameFromNowhere, link in the description. Please like, share, and subscribe this video. Until next time, we'll see you soon.